love. Shop now and get today's special offer. Fanatics.com. Officially licensed everything.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. In the next hour, we've got a lot to get to. What just happened in Chicago? This was perhaps one of the most bizarre endings to the most bizarre cases that we've ever covered here at Court TV. I'm talking about Jussie Smollett, the singer, the actor, the entertainer, who faked a hate crime. It was a hate crime hoax. He had a trial, and the jury found him guilty. And before the trial ever happened, I mean, many of us who looked at the evidence and listened to the story and saw the videos were like, his story is utterly ridiculous. The jury agreed, found him guilty. But still, as we sit here tonight, Jussie Smollett is defiant. Jussie Smollett and his family still believe and are exclaiming that he is the victim of a hate crime. Wow. So with that backdrop, I'm gonna show you what happened in court today, because it was unpredictable, it was unexpected, it was pretty shocking. And it all began with the judge's sentencing of Jussie Smollett and then his reaction. Let's watch what happened.
You're the butt of jokes. Comedians, mainstream talk show hosts, they make jokes about you. They do sketches about you. I can't imagine anything worse than that. Now, this is all self-inflicted. These are things you did to yourself. This is self-damage. Well, some people may think that what you did is funny, and that there's some room for humor or jokes about it. But I assure you, this court does not. I don't think there is anything funny at all about hoaxing and faking racial hate crimes. Hoaxing or faking homophobic hate crimes. I think that is disgraceful. There is nothing funny about it. There's no humor in what you did whatsoever. All because you're selfish, arrogant, narcissistic. At least you have that side in you that came out through this case, and you kept doubling down and doubling down and doubling down. It's not funny. It's not funny at all. And I'm your sentencing judge, and I don't find it funny. So where are we at? We're at the end. You're convicted of a Class 4 felony. It's presumptively probationable, but we have some real serious aggravating factors here. Your premeditation, which I've described. The pain you've caused to real victims of hate crimes, which I've described. The damage you've done to the city of Chicago, I've heard. It's been talked about. I'm mindful of the city's request for restitution. And if I'm going to fashion that, consider that request, I have to fashion the sentence accordingly. And above all, the capper of all cappers, your performance on the witness stand. This could only be described as pure perjury. You got on the witness stand, you didn't have to, you did, you certainly have a right to, but you committed hour upon hour upon hour of pure perjury. And I find all those to be ample factors. If this court were to decide that the things you did, that any kind of probationary sentence would deprecate the seriousness of the offense and you need to go to the penitentiary, the record is clear and it would support it. But I'm looking at everything in its totality. And I agree. It's told to me today, you can't judge everybody by one bad thing they've done in their life. I don't know if it's the only bad thing, but it's the only bad thing that I'm concerned about now. And that you do have quite a record of real community service and quite a record of attaching with people. There is a lot of mitigation in this case as well. And I'm mindful of the pleas of mercy, particularly from people that are in the arena of dealing with social justice issues, that are fighting, seriously fighting, not playing around, not doing games like you were doing, but seriously fighting for matters involving hate crimes of all sorts. And they're asking you for mercy as well. So I'm trying to consider who you are as a person, how you got here, how somehow you strayed away from your family values, you let that dark, narcissistic, selfish, and arrogant side come out, and you persisted with it for years on this case. I'm fashioning the following sentence, and here's your sentence. I'm sentencing you to 30 months felony probation, and the probation is going to be to this court. You're going to be allowed to travel wherever you want. You do not have to live in the state of Illinois. You can report by phone. I know that if you're going to try to make a living and do some of the things you do, you may have to go to other places, New York and Los Angeles. You can do those things. You will pay restitution to the city of Chicago in the amount of $120,106. You are fined $25,000, which is the maximum fine. And you will spend the first 150 days of your sentence in the Cook County Jail. And that will start today, right here, right now. Mr. Smollett, though the jury found you guilty and I've sentenced you as I have, you have the right to appeal the findings and rulings of the court or ask your sentence be modified. To do those things, you need to file a notice of appeal in writing within 30 days. We also file a motion to modify your sentence, which would have to be filed in writing within 30 days. Anything not stated in those filings are waived for purposes of appeal. You cannot afford lawyers or transcripts. They would be provided for your charge. Do you have any questions?
No, I would just like to say to Your Honor that I am not suicidal. That's what I would like to say.
Okay.
I am not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal. If I did this, then it means that I stuck my fist in the fears of Black Americans in this country for over 400 years and the fears of the LGBTQ community. Your Honor, I respect you, and I respect the jury, but I did not do this. And I am not suicidal. And if anything happens to me when I go in there, I did not do it to myself. And you must all know that. I respect you, Your Honor. I respect your decision. Jail time. I am not suicidal.
Okay.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, there's such a disconnect here between the evidence, what the jury said, what the judge saw, what the prosecutor saw, what many of us saw, what comedians saw, and many members of the public saw, and what Jussie Smollett is still saying tonight. I'm innocent, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. It's an incredible disconnect between the two, because it is that attitude and what he said that put him in jail tonight. It was him testifying and in what the judge called nothing but pure perjury that put him in jail tonight. If he had pleaded guilty, just pleaded guilty to the charges, never would have done a day in jail. But he's acting like someone you would expect who was factually innocent. But we know what the evidence is, and we know what his story is. This is bizarre. I've never seen a case like this before, where the facts are so clear to so many, yet a defendant acting like, you're all crazy. Of course, I'm innocent. I didn't do this. Let me bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, joining us tonight from Chicago, Illinois, where all of this is happening, so much happening. Talk to us about that courtroom, the reaction in the courtroom, Jussie Smollett during the course of the day, at the end. Really an unprecedented day. All of this over the lowest level felony possible in the state of Illinois.
Vinnie, you said it perfectly before that. Unpredictable, shocking, bizarre, unexpected. It was all day long. And that just capped it off right then when Jussie Smollett himself at the end stood up, had an outburst. And that wasn't the only thing that he said on his way out. So he said that. Then he was placed into the custody of the Cook County deputies, Vinnie, on his way out of the courtroom with the support of his family, standing in the gallery, raising their fist, the Black Power symbol. He had another outburst. Let's watch.
I am not suicidal.
Stop talking about black.
I am not suicidal, and I am innocent. I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago.
He clearly still had a lot to say, even though he had an opportunity formally at the end, right before the judge rendered his sentence, to say whatever he wanted to say in mitigation or ask for mercy. After an extended break, the attorneys entered back into the courtroom. He didn't say anything at that time, Vinnie, but clearly he had plenty to say all day long inside this courtroom. I mean, it was an hours-long, full day of a motion for a new trial, sentencing from both sides, aggravation and mitigation, Vinnie, all throughout those hours. I'm sitting there watching Jussie Smollett, who carries himself very confidently. When he first walked in earlier this afternoon, his posture was defiant. He's flanked by his family, his attorneys. They seem to be a strength to him, a source of comfort and support that he would look to while sitting inside the courtroom throughout the day. Now, during the testimony in sentencing of mitigation, when he had family and friends read statements when they would come to the witness stand, I noticed some emotion coming from Jussie Smollett, Vinnie. He would wipe tears away at times, especially at the time his older brother asked the judge for leniency, and then when his 92-year-old grandmother also took the stand asking this judge for mercy for her grandson. She was definitely the star witness of the day. He almost stood up like he wanted to go hug her or help her off the witness stand. He blew her kisses in the courtroom. And then at the end, he has this outburst, still very defiant and confident in his innocence still now.
The amazing thing about this case is that it's such a low-level felony. These cases don't take on a life of their own like this one did. And the question is why? And it seems it comes from the defendant himself, Jussie Smollett, because he will not admit that he did anything wrong. He will not waver from his story of being a victim of a hate crime at 2 o'clock in the morning outside or near the Subway sandwich shop in the middle of the polar vortex in Chicago. So many. The prosecutor today, I think, even used those words that it was a ridiculous story. And it's clear that the jury didn't believe his story. The judge doesn't believe. The judge noted that he perjured himself on the witness stand, hour after hour of perjury. And I think it was those moments that got under the judge's skin and is what put him in jail tonight.
Right, even the judge who gave a scathing 30-minute-long analysis of why he was sentencing Smollett to what he did sentence him to, went through the aggravators. He even pointed to Smollett's testimony on the witness stand, giving an example of how he characterized Smollett as arrogant, narcissistic, unapologetic, and came across that way even on the witness stand, according to the judge, and pointed out that he was so passionate about certain racial slurs that he called out the prosecutor, interrupted him while he was testifying on the witness stand to call him out on it, but yet he was calling out a hate crime that he staged. In fact, when he alleged people called him those names and that was all made up, he said, "You are a hypocrite," basically is what he told Jussie Smollett. And I'm watching Smollett during this time that the judge is just not mincing words with him, looking at him, telling that he felt there was overwhelming evidence that he lied to the police, that he was guilty. And Smollett just sat there, Vinnie, straight up, looked at the judge throughout the whole time. At times, he would sort of nod his head in disagreement with what the judge was saying. And I think that's what really built up so much more anger inside of Smollett that he had to release it after the sentence. He had an outburst not once, but twice because of what the judge sat there and told him for a long time.
All right, Jen, let's give the folks at home who didn't get to see it a little taste of what the judge was saying. Again, you said it took like 30, 40 minutes that he was talking about this case. I've seen the death penalty sentences quicker than this one, but let's take a listen.
I know that Jussie Smollett grew up knowing to be sensitive to matters about racial discrimination, any kind of discrimination, any kind of social injustice. And as a matter of fact, I'm learning more about it as we're going on in the letters I've been receiving and the testimony I've heard today. He's been doing this all his life. He doesn't just talk the talk, he's walking the walk. He's out there, he's advocating. He's involved in the community. He cares deeply about social justice issues. And for you now to sit here convicted of hoaxing hate crimes, racial hate crimes, and homophobic hate crimes, the hypocrisy is just astounding. I don't know where to begin. I'll remember one thing that will always stick in my mind, and I've been involved in so many trials over the years, but something happened in this trial that it was remarkable, and it talks about your sensitivity to issues of social justice. You're on the witness stand. You're being cross-examined. Your liberty is at stake. It is your criminal trial. Mr. Webb is winding through some things on cross-examination, and he's going through some social media communications, and whether it was Instagram or chat or text, a little quibbling about that, that doesn't matter. But Mr. Webb found a line that he wanted to confront you with. He said, "Didn't you say," and he used a word starting with the letter, "meet me at this place at this time," and I'm paraphrasing. And rather than just answer the question, which is what a witness is supposed to do and expected to do in their criminal trial, you stopped the proceedings. You said, "Mr. Webb, out of respect for all the African-American people in this courtroom, you should not be using that word." And I was amazed. But it showed, and I'm not talking about the parrying and the gamesmanship that may go on between a prosecutor and a witness on the stand. That's not why I'm telling this, recalling this event. But what I'm talking about is how sensitive you were to any kind of slight, that anybody, if the wrong words come out of somebody else's mouth, you're going to get up and speak up and complain about it. And make sure that they know that they're not behaving the way you're supposed to behave. So you know better than anybody else that these are serious matters. They're serious to you. They're clearly serious to you and as your whole family. And for you to be here now, convicted of these hate crimes, it's just astonishing. Faking hate crimes.
Unbelievable stuff. Let's get some reaction. Let's bring in our think tank tonight. Chanley's going to stay with us the whole hour. But joining us tonight in the Bronx, New York, criminal defense attorney Renee Hill. In Los Angeles, California, criminal defense attorney Lara Uretzian. And in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney, law professor at Emory University, and Georgia Innocence Project board member Molly Palmer. Great to see everyone. Actually, Molly's right below me over here. Lara's over here. And yeah, there's Renee. Okay, so we got everybody in the right order. Renee Hill, what just happened? What just happened in that courtroom? What is going on? There's such a disconnect between this defendant and the reality that I saw based upon the evidence that I saw that became public, the ridiculousness of his story, what the jury saw, and what we were in court for today. Like, what was this?
Well, Vinnie, obviously in Jussie's mind and in the opinion of his counsel, he is innocent, right? And he's proclaiming that, and he's not going to let that go. He was angry with the judge's decision, although he did say that he respected the court's decision in what the sentence was, but he was very upset. And I think that his final outburst in just reiterating the fact that he is innocent of these charges, but more so the fact of him saying that he's not suicidal and that if anything were to happen to him, it's not something that he did, is because of the things that happened behind closed doors, that happen in the jails to many inmates. And they cannot get in contact with their families when they're in there. So I completely understand why he would reiterate that multiple times in the courtroom, because of so many things that happen to inmates behind closed doors, and we can't get answers for them.
Let me ask you, Molly, the race issue in this sentencing today, it was really on the one hand, this is a hate crime hoax that he's been convicted of. He is still claiming he's the victim of a hate crime. The defense was arguing that the fact that he is mixed race, African-American, I think half Jewish, I believe is what came out during the course of this trial, that somehow he should be punished less because of that. And I got very confused by the whole thing. But at the end of the day, he's holding on to the fact that he's a hate crime victim. And that is what ends up putting him in jail, because he won't let go of it. There's no contrition, there's no apology, there's no remorse, there's nothing. He's just sticking to his guns, and that put him in the jail.
But I mean, I think if we're being a bit more precise, Vinny, what the judge really took issue with was his testimony, right? His perspective that this was a hate crime, his theory of defense. And honestly, I have a big problem in America's system of justice where you have a constitutional right to take the stand and defend yourself.
Right, do you have a right to commit perjury though? Do you have a right to commit perjury? Is that a right?
Well, I think-
That's a crime, isn't it?
Well, he's not charged with perjury at this point. The judge identified it as an aggravating factor and a sentencing enhancement. And they do this in the federal system too. They basically say you have obstructed justice by virtue of taking the stand. And I think the judge can point to other aggravating factors. But I do take issue with the state, with the court saying, well, if you take the stand and the jury finds you guilty, even though that's your right, even though you're exercising your right, now I'm going to enhance your sentence. And this sentence is incredibly disproportional to other people who've been charged with similar offenses. So listen,
no one's ever been accused of an offense similar to this. No one. Here's what we have to do. We have to take a quick break right now. But Renee, Lara, and Molly will be with us the whole hour. We're going to dive deep into this. I let the guests speak, but we just have to get this quick break in. We'll be right back.
That is your master, Jussie Smollett.
I am not suicidal.
Stop laughing about black.
I am not suicidal, and I am innocent. I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago.
Dramatic exit by Jussie Smollett. He's off to jail tonight. 150 days in jail for Jussie Smollett. It's a condition of his probation. He's not going to prison. He's going to jail. 150 days. Judge said, no, it doesn't matter if you're going to appeal. Doesn't matter what you're going to do. He's going right here, right now. And that's where he was off to. Welcome back, folks. Big day in Chicago, Illinois. I want to bring back in our think tank tonight. Renee Hill is with us. Molly Palmer, Lara Uretzian. Lara, what did we just see there? Did we see a criminal defendant or did we see an actor make a dramatic exit? What was that? Seriously, because the way he comports himself, I almost feel at times like he's playing a role.
You know, it sure did seem that way. I mean, I almost felt like I was watching this reality TV show, the drama and the screaming, all of it. But at the same time, as a criminal defense attorney, I can see why a defendant who's just been sentenced to time, when most people would not have been sentenced to time in a case like this, would react the way he did. He, despite what you, putting aside what you think about this case, putting aside about what you think about his testimony on the stand, whether he perjured himself, he didn't perjure himself, the damages involved, the premeditation that the judge focused on, all these aggravating circumstances that you're talking about. At the end of the day, basically, he lied to the cops, and the cops kind of went, you know, overboard with their $130,000 worth of investigation. You don't see that in the typical case. There was nothing typical about this case.
But wait, Lara, let's put a little perspective on it. Don't you think that this was an attempt to almost embarrass the Chicago police, that there could be some sort of a hate crime and you guys aren't going to be able to solve it, and this is happening right here in the streets of Chicago? There was a lot at stake. He went on to GMA immediately to make this a national story. So how this this lowest level felony in Illinois becomes such a big case is because of him. It's not really because of who he is, because before this, honestly, I never watched the show. I didn't know who he was. And there's a lot of people who didn't know who he was. There's millions that did know him beforehand. But there were many millions more that know him from this and never knew him from this show. And everything that happened was brought on to him because of his own actions.
In some ways, yes, a lot of it was brought on to him, just like the judge said. He did more damage to himself than anything else could have done to him. But does that necessarily justify the amount of hours put in by the police department? Did they not have any other crimes out there? Were there any murders? I mean, we're talking about one crime. Wait a
minute. Wait right there. Time out. I'm going to defend the police for just a second here, because I know all three of you will gang up on the cops. I know you will. So a hate crime occurs to a celebrity in the streets of Chicago. He's got a noose around his neck, and you don't want Chicago to really investigate it? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, we don't have to worry about this. And then if they didn't investigate it, what would the headline be? What would the headline be?
But they were investigating. But wait a minute, Vinnie, they were investigating.
You're attacking Chicago for solving the case.
But they went overboard, which means they were giving him special treatment. Is that what they were doing? So if this was someone else, not Jussie Smollett.
No, I think it was the hate crime that made it. It was the hate crime aspect of it, I think, that gave it the attention. Crime,
right? Would it have gotten this kind of attention if it wasn't Jussie Smollett?
Absolutely.
If the hate crime,
absolutely. Come on, anyone. If anyone who's got a noose around their neck and was attacked by people wearing MAGA hats, saying this is MAGA country. Renee Hill, are you with me or are you with Lara on this? That the celebrity didn't matter. It was the story. It was the allegation that made this so huge.
No, I think the celebrity did matter, Vinnie. I really do. There are so many crimes that are victims that report crimes to the police department, and sometimes
a crime of this nature.
They do pick and choose sometimes what they're going to investigate and how they are going to investigate those particular crimes. Absolutely, it definitely happens.
All right, a politically motivated hate crime attacking someone because of the color of their skin and their sexual orientation. They were just kind of like, oh, see that every day, and they're wearing the MAGA hats. Come on, there's no way that there's. Okay, let's listen to a little bit more of the judge today, because the judge really, this was another unexpected part of today's proceedings. Let's watch.
Let me tell you, Mr. Smollett, I know that there is nothing that I will do here today that can come close to the damage you've already done to your own life. You've turned your life upside down by your misconduct and shenanigans. You've destroyed your life as you knew it. And there's nothing that any sentencing judge could do to you that can compare to the damage you've already caused yourself. There's some conjecture you did it for the money. Frankly, I do not believe that you did it for the money. You were making, the evidence showed, close to $2 million a year when this happened. I don't think money motivated you at all. But the only thing I can find is that you really craved the attention and you wanted to get the attention and you were so invested in issues of social justice and you knew that this was a sore spot for everybody in this country. You knew this was a country that was slowly trying to heal past injustices and current injustices and trying to make a better future for each other. And it was a hard road. And you took some scabs off some healing wounds and you ripped them apart for one reason. You wanted to make yourself more famous. And for a while it worked. Everybody was talking about you. The lights are on you. You were actually throwing a national pity party for yourself. And why would you do such a thing? Why would you, I understand you crave the attention so much, but why would you betray something like social justice issues, which you care so much about? And the only thing I can conclude is that, and I acknowledge, there are wonderful sides to you. There are very giving and charitable and loving sides to you, but you have another side of you that is profoundly arrogant and selfish and narcissistic.
Wow. Molly, I think that really gets to the heart of this case because the judge in that part was answering, why would he do it? Why would you do this? And it was because of more fame, narcissism, the attention, and everyone forgets how this whole thing started. He was the victim. He was the victim because the defense has been jumping up and down saying, oh, everybody made up their minds and no. At first, everybody thought he was a victim. And then when the facts came out, everyone unraveled and saw the truth of this. So can't have it both ways.
Yeah, but I mean, I think in this case, it's so clear that this judge is fixated on personality. And I just wonder what 150 days in jail does for personality. And if the judge believes that truly he's already ruined his career, he's the laughing stock of America, then why, throw him into the Cook County Jail for this length of time? I think ultimately, given the county jail, he'll end up serving something like 75 days. But it's almost performative to me now from the judge as well. The whole thing in that courtroom seems to be a bit overblown and melodramatic, not just Jussie. And so, I think it's a little bit excessive. And you don't sentence somebody to this magnitude of a sentence much higher than anybody else simply because you don't like their personality, right? It's, in my opinion, a nonviolent offense, he could have gotten a few days in jail. I don't like the judge fixating on what he perceives as just his characteristics driving 150 days in the jail.
All right, folks, we've got a lot more to get to. When we come back, we're going to check back at the courthouse. Chanley Painter standing by live. We're waiting to hear from the defense team. We've got a lot more to dive into. Jussie Smollett tonight in the Cook County Jail, sentenced to 150 days behind bars.
realeestate.co.
Welcome back to Closing Arguments and our continuing breaking news tonight out of Chicago, Illinois. Jussie Smollett has been sentenced to 150 days behind bars in the Cook County Jail. That's where he'll be sleeping tonight. Now, the prosecutor who argued to have him put in jail tonight is speaking at the courthouse. Let's listen in.
Well, we just had and concluded a very important sentencing hearing on the Smollett case, and the Office of Special Prosecutor is extraordinarily pleased with the result today. Judge Lynn, in his comments, made it clear that he has accepted our office's position that this was a very serious underlying course of criminal misconduct, and that beyond the nature of that criminal misconduct of lying to police, that the collateral consequences of what Mr. Smollett did was to harm other gays and blacks because his conduct denigrated hate crimes. His conduct will discourage others who are the victims of hate crimes from coming forward and reporting those crimes to law enforcement and pursuing them. That was our position as to why this was a very underlying, serious criminal course of misconduct which had significant collateral consequences. The court today was his sentence by imposing a significant jail sentence, by imposing the maximum amount of restitution, by imposing the maximum fine, and by imposing the maximum amount of probation. This judge clearly, in his comments, made it clear that he clearly has understood from the evidence we presented at trial that this was a course of conduct that deserved severe punishment based on the conviction that was obtained from the jury. Questions?
What did you think about his outburst?
Well, I wasn't quite sure. I'm not going to interpret the outburst. I'm not going to interpret it. I don't know exactly what he was referring to, and I'm not going to interpret it.
Are you surprised he's sticking to his story?
Well, I made the point during my argument to the judge that I thought one of the critical factors that the court should consider in determining how serious the underlying criminal conduct was and whether it warranted jail time was an argument I made that this defendant, Jussie Smollett, has never shown to the city of Chicago an ounce of contrition. He's never once stood up to say, I'm sorry. He's never once stood up to accept responsibility for his criminal conduct. He has simply denied it, denied it, and denied it. So again, today, after he's now been convicted by a jury of 5 felony counts, after he heard a judge today excoriate his conduct as being reprehensible conduct, he still stood up in the courtroom and insisted that he's not going to ever admit or accept any responsibility for what he did to the Chicago Police Department or his violation of responsibility to other gays and African Americans because it's made it hard for people to report hate crimes because of his conduct.
His office sounds like they're definitely going to appeal. Will your office be working on that as well?
Yes, the Special Prosecutor's Office is going to continue to handle the appeal. We're going to see this all the way to the end, and the answer is yes.
Why did you feel confident not recommending a sentence?
Well, here's my position. During the course of handling this case, the court system gave us an extremely experienced, competent trial judge. Judge Lynn, throughout this entire 2-year proceedings, after we returned this new indictment, Judge Lynn has always shown himself to be extraordinarily experienced and fair to both sides. And so as a prosecutor, I decided I did not want to step into his territory. It's the judge that has the exclusive responsibility to determine a sentence. And I decided as a special prosecutor, while I was going to strongly recommend jail, that I was not going to tread into his territory, that it was up to him to decide the appropriate amount. I thought it was the right way to do it. And I do believe that based on the sentence that we just received, that Judge Lynn clearly understood exactly what had happened in this case. He understood the serious course of criminal misconduct by Mr. Smollett, and he imposed basically an appropriate sentence in my judgment based on the conduct that occurred in the case.
Did you find this to be a difficult case?
Well, the case is difficult in the sense that, you know, when you take on a case as a pro bono prosecutor and you're not being paid for your time, you don't know how long it's going to take. You just don't know. But it turned out that this has taken a long time. My firm made the commitment that we're going to do it, and we've done it, and we're going to see it all the way through appeal. Okay, y'all have a good day. Thank you.
Kim Fox has put out a statement. She's saying this is a damaging, costly, and disingenuous criminal prosecution. Further called us a kangaroo prosecution.
Well, I haven't seen State's Attorney Fox's statement. I guess all I can rely upon is the Cook County court system, Judge Tooman, after hearing all the facts and evidence that occurred in connection with the first Smollett case, and when the judge heard the evidence that, in fact, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office dismissed the entire indictment with no punishment whatsoever, no jail time, no restitution, no criminal fine, no probation, no deferred pros. Smollett was allowed to go free and basically give the finger to the city of Chicago. Judge Tooman decided that handling of that case was so inappropriate that a special prosecutor needed to be appointed. So I followed the directions of Judge Tooman and not the directions of Kim Fox.
So, sorry, what's the time frame then on his opportunity to come back to the court and request another appeal?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understand.
Can you challenge the sentence?
Well, that may become part of the appeal. They get to decide what they want to appeal on. So whether they will include any sentencing issues in the appeal, that's up to the defense to determine, not up to us.
They have a window in which to do this?
Well, their entire appeal has to be perfected within so many, I think it's 30 days after the final order. The final order will be entered by the judge, I assume, in the next day or so, and then the time starts to run.
Well, at the end of the day, does this feel fair and just outcome?
Do I believe it's fair and just? Yes, I do believe it's fair and just. I had a lot of confidence that Judge Lynn understood the evidence, understood how serious the criminal misconduct was, and I had confidence that based on all his years of experience, that he would come to a fair and rational punishment based on the underlying conduct. The judge started his comments today by pointing out that he's considered everything about the case: the nature of Mr. Smollett as a person, the underlying course of misconduct, and how serious it was. And Judge Lynn made the decision that there should be significant punishment imposed on Mr. Smollett, and that's the result of the sentence today.
And the 30 months starts now, so
The
150 days is,
well,
it's not 30 months after the 150.
That's right. This is a condition of probation. So his probation starts now, and the first period of time that the judge, 150 days, will be served in Cook County Jail. But that's part of his probation sentence. Okay, have a nice evening. Thank you.
And there's the prosecutor answering questions afterwards. Special prosecutor, by the way, did it all for free. And the judge pointed that out on the bench. We've got a lot more to get to. Again, big breaking news tonight. Jussie Smollett, the actor, is behind bars tonight in Cook County. He's been convicted and now sentenced to 150 days in jail.
334.
I'm sentencing you to 30 months felony probation, and the probation is going to be to this court. You're going to be allowed to travel wherever you want. You do not have to live in the state of Illinois. You can report by phone. I know that if you're going to try to make a living and do some of the things you do, you may have to go to other places, New York and Los Angeles. You can do those things. You will pay restitution to the city of Chicago in the amount of $120,106. You are fined $25,000, which is the maximum fine. And you will spend the first 150 days of your sentence in the Cook County Jail.
Oh, that little part at the end. I don't know if the defense team or Jussie Smollett was expecting that, but he's in jail tonight as a result. Let me bring back in my think tank, still with me, Renee Hill, Molly Palmer, and Lara Uretzian. I want you to listen to Jussie's brother. His whole family spoke outside the courthouse, but take a listen to what his brother said, and I want to get your reaction.
The duly elected judge, James Lynn, all right? I don't understand, and I spoke specifically today to the judge, and I asked for leniency. I did not expect him to be completely lenient and listen, but at the same time, he shamed my brother. He spoke about his arrogance. He doesn't know the struggles my brother is encountering. He doesn't know anything that he's dealing with. He doesn't know anything that he's dealing with. He's spent all that time shaming him. In 2022, we don't shame people like this. All right? He basically called him a mental case. All right? If you look at that testimony, he basically reiterated and regurgitated all the prosecutor said. There was no independence. This is a duly elected judge in Cook County. He's supposed to be elected by the people, not just a stooge and a rubber stamp for the prosecutors. And I'm very disappointed, very disappointed.
All right. I'm confused here because I've watched a lot of sentencings, and that's generally what happens during sentencings. Don't judges talk about what the defendant did and explain why they're being sentenced for what they did? Because the sentence is based upon what they did and who they are. That's a judge's job, isn't it, Renee?
Yes, I mean, you have the judge imposing sentence, and they have presided over the trial. They have sat there and listened to the testimony, and it's clear. And whenever there is a conviction, it is clear that the judge, will adopt the position or the arguments of the prosecution because there's been a conviction, right? So now they're going to, in a sense, regurgitate what the facts are as the jury has determined, and spew that back at the defendant if it's a heinous type crime, to give a reason and a basis for the sentence that the judge is about to impose. That is their opportunity to say all the things that they want to say about the defendant based on what was heard during the course of the trial. Because if there's an acquittal, the judge is not going to have that opportunity to give an opinion or say anything about how they personally feel about the defendant.
Yeah.
So they take the opportunity to do that when there is a conviction.
And Molly, my guess is that Jussie's brother doesn't really understand our system that well because he's not, he's not in courtrooms and getting arrested and being sentenced and all that stuff. So it might be first time for him, but the political correctness doesn't apply to a judge. You can shame a criminal defendant who has committed a crime and is being sentenced. That's kind of like their job.
Well, I think what he's saying is that he found the judge to be unduly harsh. He thought it was an excessively punitive sentence, and arguably there's reason to believe that— No, but he said
you don't shame people in 2022. This is a criminal defendant being sentenced by a criminal judge. Like, isn't that what they do?
I mean, I think you can do that without shaming somebody. And the other thing that the brother pointed out, and let me say, as a defense lawyer, you always want family that is supportive of your client. So I think that's great that his family stood by him throughout all of this. I think that's a good thing. But the brother said, listen, he treated him like he had mental health issues, and maybe he does. And a different judge may say, listen, I think you have these mental health issues, so I'm going to sentence you to therapy and treatment. That's something he could have done. But this idea of 150 days in jail, the brother is reacting to the excessiveness of the punishment.
I get it. Before we run out of time, Lara, you have the last 25 seconds. Go ahead.
Well, I thought that the judge was acting more like a psychoanalyst or a psychologist at some point, because he was trying to figure out, and it's not for him to sit and figure out why this particular defendant committed the crime that he's alleged to have committed. And he was trying to figure out, I thought it through, and this is why, that I thought he went overboard. I think everybody in this case, I agree with the rest of the panelists here, that everybody, all the parties involved went overboard on this case. This case, had it not involved the celebrity and possibly some of the facts involved, it would not have gotten this kind of attention and would have never had this kind of drama at all. And we would have never had this kind of a sentence. He probably would have just been placed on probation.
Renee Hill, Molly Palmer, Larry Uretzian, thank you so much. We've got a lot more coverage straight ahead.
Hope.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments and our special continuing coverage of the big breaking news tonight out of Chicago, Illinois. Actor, entertainer Jussie Smollett was sentenced. Remember, he was convicted of a hate crime hoax, a level 4 felony, the lowest of all felonies that you can be convicted of in the state of Illinois. Despite that, as we sit here tonight, Jussie Smollett is behind bars. Let's take a listen to the judge delivering the sentence.
I'm sentencing you to 30 months felony probation, and the probation is going to be to this court. You're going to be allowed to travel wherever you want. You do not have to live in the state of Illinois. You can report by phone. I know that if you're going to try to make a living and do some of the things you do, you may have to go to other places, New York and Los Angeles. You can do those things. You will pay restitution to the city of Chicago in the amount of $120,106. You are fined $25,000, which is the maximum fine. And you will spend the first 150 days of your sentence in the Cook County Jail.
Did you catch that little last part? It was almost like, all right, you're going to do 30 months of probation, and oh yeah, the first 150 days behind bars in the Cook County Jail. It's not a prison sentence, it's a jail sentence. It's a condition of his probation, but he's locked up tonight. He's locked up tonight. Let's go straight out to Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, who is in Chicago, Illinois tonight at the courthouse. Chanley, for folks just joining us tonight, set the scene. What was it like inside that courthouse? Some of the reactions, what people are saying, because I don't know if anyone was necessarily expecting Jussie Smollett to be behind bars tonight.
Vinnie, in the more than 3 years I've worked at Court TV, I've sat in courtrooms, I've sat in sentencing hearings and listened to judges render sentences, render verdicts. I've never seen what I witnessed tonight inside of a courtroom with the defendant voicing his disdain, maintaining his innocence, standing to do so with the encouragement of his family in the gallery, Vinnie, defiance in full force inside this courtroom, and continue to do so. And his attorneys allowed him to do so. And after he was handcuffed and taken out of the courtroom to start serving his sentence, he continued to maintain his innocence in a way that I've never seen before. This day full of unexpected twists and turns. First of all, the first unexpected thing, Vinnie, this was a more than 5-hour sentencing hearing, which we don't see a lot of times. A sentencing hearing extending so long throughout the day. It was an exhausting day. You could feel it in the courtroom. It was a lot of pent-up emotion. I think that was really let out there at the end of the day. It started with that motion for a new trial from the defense team, arguing more than 13 grounds as to why this judge should throw out the conviction with Jussie Smollett. That was denied, and then the defense started calling these witnesses of mitigation for Jussie Smollett, including his brother and his grandmother. I didn't notice a lot of overreactions from the defendant as he sat there inside the courtroom. He sat confidently until his family members started to ask the judge for leniency in a sentence, and he started to wipe tears from his eyes, remove his mask, especially when his 92-year-old grandmother took the stand on his behalf. He would look towards her and, of course, towards the gallery during those moments. And then when the sentence started to be read by the judge, Vinnie, you could just tell that he was unhappy with what the judge was telling him, because the judge did not hold back and really scolding him for about 30 minutes before rendering this decision.
You know, a big part of this sentencing by the judge was answering that question, why? And I really felt like for the judge, this was what got under his skin a little bit, the motivation behind Jussie Smollett creating this fake hate crime, this hate crime hoax that we keep talking about. It seemed that the judge really zeroed in on that and spent a lot of time talking about that.
He really really did, Vinnie, and in detail, to the point that he was arguing the case again, going step by step through what he called the most extreme aggravating factor in the sentencing. Because here, with the PSI report to the judge, the presumptive sentence for Smollett was only probation. But the judge took his time to really outline why he wanted to give him more than just the presumptive sentence. And one of those was the extreme premeditation that went into faking this hate crime. And he detailed step by step what Jussie Smollett did, how he planned it out, how he used the Osendaro brothers to do so. And he talked about the damages to the city of Chicago, that they spent more than $130,000 trying to investigate the seriousness of this hate crime. He pointed to the testimony of Jussie Smollett to the jury, committing perjury upon hour upon hour upon hour on that witness stand, Vinnie. All of these factors culminating, the judge said, in a totality of circumstances. He did consider mitigation as well, but that was why he tried to depart from that presumptive sentence that normally someone in Jussie's position would have received tonight.
And you mentioned the length of this, 5 hours. Just to give folks at home some perspective, when you're talking about low-level felonies like this, when I was a prosecutor, any given Friday was sentencing day. I'd have a stack of cases, like this high. I'd do 15 sentences in a couple hours, like one after the other. This is extraordinary, but the entire case has been extraordinary from the beginning and different. It's been fully litigated. But getting back to that fact, where the defiance of it all, where he is still claiming, not that they didn't prove it, but that he is innocent and that he is the victim of a hate crime. He has not wavered from that one bit. And then you look on the other side of that, you have the prosecutor today basically saying something along the lines of what I've been saying, that the story that he had, the story that he told, his version of what happened that night is, in light of the evidence, seems ridiculous. And the jury obviously didn't buy it. I don't know if they thought it was ridiculous, but those are the types of words that the prosecutor was using.
Oh, yeah, and the prosecutor spoke out here in the hallway right behind me just a little bit ago, Vinnie. He said that he was purposeful in not recommending a specific sentence. But in his, probably about 30 minutes, he argued a sentence, and as to why the judge should depart from the presumptive sentence, argued factors of the extreme criminal misconduct in this case, and the fact that there was no contrition on the part of Jussie Smollett in this crime and the damages caused to the city. The judge agreed with that and echoed a lot of the sentiments of the prosecution. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the prosecutor told all the media out here that they were pleased with the outcome. They thought it was a fair and a just sentence, and they bragged on Judge Lynn and his experience, that he would take all the facts into consideration, weigh the evidence and the mitigators, aggravators to reach this sort of consensus. But there were some strong words used from the judge to Jussie Smollett, and you could just read it in Smollett's body language as he was sitting there listening to the judge talk to him.
And what's the scene at the courthouse right now? Do we expect anything else to happen tonight?
We are waiting on the defense team to exit the courthouse. They haven't done so yet. We're expecting that they will also speak to the media. I don't know if my photographer Brandon can pan and show you, Vinnie, the scene in the hallway, which is camera after camera after camera, media from all over the nation waiting on standby for a press conference or some words from the defense side. We've heard from the family of Jussie Smollett, very disappointed and angered at the outcome of this hearing today. They, at one point, I was even yelled at by one of his sisters. Shame on you, journalist, is what we were yelled at as they left the courthouse here. A lot of emotions as they left, saying that he is innocent. This was unjust and unfair. We heard from the prosecution team saying that they were pleased with the outcome and the sentence of this case. We also heard from the attorney for Ola Osendaro, who was here all day, Vinnie. He was in the overflow room. He he listened to the sentencing hearing. He didn't have any overreactions. He talked about his brother Abel is training at the U.S. Boxing Center in Colorado, could not be here for this sentencing hearing. But through his attorney, as they left the courthouse, they said that they do have a lot to say about this matter, but it's not yet the right time for them to speak publicly. But they do appreciate the efforts of the prosecution and the judge and are pleased with the outcome, Vinnie.
All right, Chanley Painter at the courthouse tonight. Great information, great reporting, and if anything happens, let us know. We'll get right back out to you. Let me bring in our guests. Joining me in Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator, former police officer Rob Joseph. In Chicago, Illinois, private investigator Erica Moore. She's also a great victims advocate. And in Los Angeles, California, forensic psychiatrist and trial expert witness and columnist Dr. Carol Lieberman is with us. And I just want everyone watching tonight to know that I threw all three of you a curveball tonight. You were coming on for a couple different stories, but we're going to do this one. It's big breaking news tonight, and I think all of your different experiences will help us here. I want to begin, Dr. Carol Lieberman, I want you to take a listen to Jussie Smollett. He had 2 outbursts today inside the courtroom, and I'm really interested in your analysis of the words that he is speaking. Let's take a listen.
No, I would just like to say to Your Honor that I am not suicidal. That's what I would like to say.
Okay.
I am not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal. If I did this, then it means that I stuck my fist in the fears of Black Americans in this country for over 400 years and the fears of the LGBTQ community. Your Honor, I respect you and I respect the jury, but I did not do this. And I am not suicidal. And if anything happens to me when I go in there, I did not do it to myself. And you must all know that. I respect you, Your Honor. I respect your decision. Jail time. I am not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not suicidal.
Stop talking about black.
I am not suicidal, and I am innocent. I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago.
Okay, Dr. Carol Lieberman, I'm really interested in your reaction to his reaction today inside the courtroom. I mean, he said it over and over again, I'm not suicidal.
Well, you could interpret that at least 2 different ways. One is, sometimes when people are very forceful in saying, I am not such and such, it really means that they do have suicidal thoughts. But on the other hand, it seems like maybe he's trying to say, talking about how some Black prisoners, wind up suicide. I mean, it's alleged that they have committed suicide, and if that happens to him, it's he was attacked in the jail, and it wasn't voluntary that he committed suicide. So you could look at it either way, but it's so interesting. I did watch some of it today. It did go on forever, and I think his lawyers may well have given him a false impression that he had a good chance of the verdict being thrown out, or that they will appeal. I mean, they can still appeal, but so I think he wasn't expecting this. He wasn't expecting any jail. And that's why it came as more of a shock when, especially at the end of the judge's speech, to then throw in, these 150 days. But
let me ask you this, Doctor. Doctor, I wanted to clarify the first point. So him saying that, would you suggest that when he goes to the jail that he be evaluated just to make sure everything's okay?
Absolutely. It's like a rare rabbit. Don't throw me in the briar patch. So yes, he should be evaluated, and they really should, of course, be particularly careful to make sure nothing does happen to him. Absolutely, and I hope he's saying the truth, that he's not suicidal. That's good, but on the other hand, we want him to be safe inside the jail. Rob Joseph, this case, the victim, this is a strange case, right? Most cases there's a victim, right? If it's a robbery, or if it's an attempted murder or a burglary, we kind of know who the victim is. Here, the victim seemed to be the entire city of Chicago, but particularly really the police department. You're a former officer. What are your thoughts about this case in general? Someone who has faked a crime, and not faked just any old crime, but faked a hate crime. And it was a high profile case. After it happens, he goes on Good Morning America. So everyone's
wondering about this case, and now the investigation's in the hands of the police, and it turns out that they uncovered that the whole thing was a hoax. I'd be really interested in your reaction as a former police officer to this whole case, this whole crime.
Well, you have a pretty disturbed individual here that was willing to turn the whole city, the whole country on its head to promote himself. He didn't care about anyone except himself, what the fallout would be, how it would impact just people in the city, people impacted by riots, attacking the police, accusing them of lying and fabricating evidence. I mean, what I'm hearing today, it's like I want to applaud the final act because he is playing this all the way to jail. And I don't know, maybe he's planning to go out with a bang with a suicide and then try to claim, in his last act that it was a murder or something. But this is clearly a disturbed individual that was willing to do whatever it took to promote himself. And, shame on him because of the people's lives that were impacted by this, the degree of hatred, the chaos he created around the country and I think around the world, associating with, being a victim and a hate crime, and it's such a terrible thing. And as a former police officer, just absolutely disgusted because there are so many victims out there. And when, police officers hear about these types of things, you start looking at them a little bit sideways and you start questioning the validity of them. And it's the same with women and rape. When, people come out with, claims that are totally false, it impacts those that are actually victims of those crimes. And it just has a rippling effect that goes through everything. And it's really one of those things that's going to take a little time to kind of get squared away and bring it back to where it should be because of what this one individual has done.
Erica Morse, you're an incredible advocate for so many victims. I'd like to hear that perspective, but you also lived through all this because you're in Chicago. So give me your thoughts tonight.
Of going to jail, and that's because Cook County is not a place to be. I know guys who have been in Cook County jail, and they don't come out the same. It's one of the roughest county jails in America. And he did something that turned the city upside down. He did something that turned law enforcement upside down and put enormous pressure on those individuals to solve that case. There was a mandate, essentially, for CPD to get this case solved because for several days, the community thought that there were guys running around out there putting nooses out and potentially targeting Black men in Chicago. The backlash that CPD faced for not solving this quicker or getting somebody into custody quicker, only to then determine that this was a hoax. To be honest, to me, 150 days is a slap in the face. $130,000 in overtime alone from CPD. A district attorney who was pretty much on their butts every second of every day to close this case, and a community on complete edge. So he needs to be grateful tonight that it's only 5 months, but they're going to be 5 very rough months. And I suspect that screaming and that I did not kill, I'm not suicidal, it's because he knows what's coming. He's going to take backlash from the guards. He's going to take backlash from the inmates. And he perpetrated a hate crime at a time where the country was already up in arms. Bad move.
All right, our guest staying with us. We've got more coverage of our breaking news tonight, but I got to let you know that the latest episode of the Court TV podcast is now available. This week, Court TV's Chanley Painter joins me as we take a look at the tragic story of the missing Cal City toddlers, Orrin and Orson West, and break down the charging documents for their adoptive parents who have now been indicted on second-degree murder charges. Take a listen.
They were actually described by their parents as rambunctious. So how easily could one person or two people scoop up two rambunctious kids, 3 and 4, without dad noticing anything while they're all outside at the same time?
It's so unlikely. And, you look at statistics of, missing children in the National Center, for missing and exploited children, and they keep statistics. It's so rare, Vinnie, that there is this sort of abduction, right? It's less than 1% of the missing 30,000 children that there are, that this actually does happen. It's an unlikely scenario to begin with.
You can find the Court TV podcast wherever you listen, and it's always available, of course, at courttv.com. We'll be back with more of our breaking news coverage of the sentencing of Jussie Smollett.
And find the car you need all on your phone.
than to be a victim of a hate crime. It is the worst thing that can happen, especially in our country with all our history and all that we're going through now to try to get around some of these issues. Hate crimes are the absolute worst. And I believe that you did damage to real hate crimes, to hate crime victims. There are people that are actual, genuine victims of hate crimes that you did damage to.
The judge calling out actor Jussie Smollett at his sentencing hearing today. 150 days in the Cook County Jail, 30 months of probation. That was the sentence today. And right now, outside of the courthouse in Chicago, his defense team speaking.
Sorry. Well, we all saw what happened in court today. Regardless of what anyone's feelings is about Mr. Smollett, regardless of whether there are people out there that believe he's guilty, obviously we're his defense team. We strongly believe in his innocence. And all I would say is this sentence today calls attention to what black people in the United States have been complaining about for a long, long time. The NAACP letter that came in to Judge Lynn reminded him that black defendants convicted of a felony were more likely than white defendants to be sentenced to prison at 57% and 39% respectively. I also pointed out to Judge Lynn a recent decision he made, 2019 case, case number 19 CR 0139401, a domestic battery where the defendant had a prior. And Judge Lynn gave that person 2 years probation for a crime of violence. So the question has to be asked, regardless of how you feel about Jussie Smollett, is it fair what happened today? And the answer is absolutely not. This is round 2 of sentencing. Round 1, Jussie paid $10,000 fines to the city of Chicago, and he was made to do community service. The sovereign, which is the state of Illinois, entered into a contractual obligation with him. He specifically performed his part of the obligation, and they did not. They brought back the charge with a special prosecutor. You can change the agents, but you cannot change the principal. And that special prosecutor has now prosecuted him, got in a conviction, and now he's being sentenced on top of the $10,000. And now he's being told he has to pay $120,000 something plus fines of up to $25,000, and he has to do 30 months probation. On top of that, his career has been negatively impacted. So regardless of where anyone stands in the aisle as to where they feel or how they feel about Jussie, the question is, isn't that beating a dead horse? Isn't that going too far? And it is going too far, all right? So right now, for a Class 4 felony, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm a criminal defense attorney and a civil rights attorney. I'm a former prosecutor. I have never seen in my entire career as an attorney, and none of the other attorneys here have ever seen a situation where a Class 4 felony gets the same treatment as a violent offense. In fact, I would say I've never seen a violent offense get this much fines.
So there you have the defense outside of the courthouse. And fascinating argument that they're making, that Jussie Smollett was sentenced to jail because of the color of his skin. I'm not buying it. I think it's disingenuous, and I think it does some damage. The damage that the judge was talking about, that the prosecutor was talking about, that the police were talking about by engaging in a hate crime hoax. Let me bring back in my guests, Erica Morris, Rob Joseph, still with me. Erica Morris, I know you represent so many victims that are looking for a sense of justice. I mean, that was a big part of what this judge was talking about, the impact that this hate crime hoax has on legitimate victims of actual hate crimes.
Absolutely. I have worked cases where hate crimes have been alleged, and it's a different level of emotional trauma for the families. And so when someone fakes this purportedly for the advancement of his career, and then has the audacity to stand up in a courtroom and claim his innocence. And I want to say something else. How dare those attorneys fan the flames in Chi-Town tonight? I don't appreciate it. I don't think the community appreciates it. As a reporter, I have covered riots back to the 80s and the 90s when people were trapped in their homes and more recently over the last few years. This is a dangerous narrative to try to sell tonight. The community is divided, I'm sure already. Sure, I understand it's their job to fight for their client, but not this way. If they want to argue these technicalities and the double jeopardy, I get it. That's their jobs. But this is not the time for a PR stunt, and I don't appreciate it.
Yeah, Rob, Joseph, to me, the judge was very clear in the reasoning for this sentence. It wasn't the color of Jussie Smollett's skin. That wasn't the reason. It was the motivation behind why he would engage in a hate crime hoax, and it was merely for his own advancement, his own fame.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty disingenuous, the defense attorneys, jumping in and saying, oh, he's innocent, we believe in him, we're defense attorneys, that's what we believe. Well, I can tell you from my experience, I'm sure you have your own experience, that defense attorneys don't always believe in their clients. You're looking for the procedural mistakes, the unlawful arrests, and all of these types of things to get the client off. It doesn't necessarily mean they're innocent, but they're just kind of throwing gasoline on the flames. It's like, let's burn the city down, and in defense of Jussie Smollett, and it is pretty disingenuous. It does not help the cause. As somebody that has handled a lot of racial discrimination cases over the years, filed dozens of them on behalf of minorities, it angers me. It just angers me because it really hurts what we're trying to do in bringing the appropriate amount of attention to these types of things.
Rob, Joseph, Erica Morse, thank you so much for helping us out with this breaking news tonight. Always great to see you. We'll see you again really soon.
Thanks, Vinnie.
Still ahead.
In Louisville, Kentucky, a new documentary on our sister network, Newsy, Model City, which takes a closer look at the city's attempt at police reform.
The men and women of this department stand ready to do our part.
And tonight, we take a closer look at police reform in Louisville with the journalists who worked on the project and our own law enforcement experts in a special edition of Crime Time.
call it Derby City. Others call it the gateway to the South. And in 2016, Louisville, Kentucky called itself a model city, promising to change how it policed. But what started as a model for success,
The men and women of this department stand ready to do our part.
soon became a model for failure.
There was problems before, but Breonna Taylor is the case that kicked it over.
People are ready to die and go to jail.
Police is at a reckoning in America right now.
You're worried about the killings in the West End.
There isn't a heavy police presence now that the crime is rising.
We're still responding to calls. We're still coming to help. But we're terrified of what happens if we make a wrong decision.
Welcome back. We've got a special Crime Time segment tonight. What you just saw was a trailer for a new documentary on our sister network, Newsy. It's premiering Sunday, as you saw, and it takes a look at the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department and the attempts at reform into making themselves a model city. This is an investigative piece that you need to watch on Sunday. And let's bring in our guest tonight. We're going to talk about all this. Joining me in Cincinnati, Ohio, visual journalist for the National Investigations with the EW Scripps Washington Bureau, Carrie Cochran, is with us. In Columbia, Missouri, an investigative reporter with our sister network, Newsy, Karen Rodriguez, is with us. In Falls Church, Virginia, former Special Agent Supervisor with the Department of Homeland Security, Dr. Jason Piccolo. And in Atlanta, Georgia, retired DEA Special Agent Ted Golden is with us. So let me start. I'll start with you, Karen. Taking a look at this, give us the big picture on what this documentary takes a look at and what the whole premise is here.
That's right. Good evening. Thank you for having us. So the Model City is a story about the city of Louisville and how this police department really embraced reform in 2016 and really tried to better the relationship with its community and specifically the communities of color in Louisville and how it failed and the consequences of that failure. And so it really tells the story of how this department went from a national model to the national face of a national protest movement against police.
And Carrie, how over what course of time is this story told? Are you tracking? Are you tracking months, years? Give us an idea.
So we first pitched the story in, I think, June of 2020. So we saw, as the rest of the country did, what the reaction was after George Floyd, but also what was happening just an hour and a half from where I was in Cincinnati here in Louisville. Breonna Taylor had been killed in Louisville, and that actually had happened in March, months earlier, but it really didn't get the attention of the public until kind of after George Floyd, after things had been released, sort of a slow trickle of information. So the public was sort of kept in the dark about a lot of details. And so in June of 2020, we pitched it, and this follows probably through spring of 2021.
And we're taking a look at these images. I mean, Louisville has been at the center of so much of this. Let's do this. Let's take a look at it. I want everyone to see a clip from the documentary, and then we can talk about it and bring in Dr. Jason Piccolo and Ted Golden, who have, walked in those shoes. Let's take a look.
A man got killed down here in the alley. It's a murder at 26 and Elliott at Dino's. Uh-oh, listen. There's the shots. All right. The spot. Personnel on scene. Another one. Look at that. Look on the points. They didn't move. How accustomed we are to what we just heard.
110 Old Shots Fire on 127 Broadway.
Now that's what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with.
27 Broadway, 27 Broadway, 5 for real.
Homicides in Louisville soared in 2020, reaching an all-new high. The West End was hit especially hard.
Why has there been almost nothing done? There isn't a heavy police presence now that the crime is rising. They blame it on lack of staff. We don't have enough officers. But this is my question. Where are the officers that y'all do have?
We're still responding to calls. We're still coming to help. But we're not being proactive right now because we are terrified of what happens if we make a wrong decision. We're seeing what happens when officers are afraid to work. The black community in Louisville is suffering now more than ever.
Fascinating look at the rise of crime. Ted Golden, I want to start with you on this. Your thoughts about, okay, we've got this rise in crime in 2020. We've got officers hedging to respond because of everything else that's going on.
Well, you know, it's the knee-jerk from this situation occurring. And unfortunately, law enforcement receives the brunt of the frustration of the general public because they're out there and they're visible. And when we look at these situations, we have to be distinct. It takes both law enforcement and the community to make things better. You can't ever expect one entity to come in and solve everybody's problems. Because when you live in that environment, you are either part of the problem or part of the solution. Dr. King talks about those folks who stand by and watch. And realistically, that's what it takes, is for everybody to stand up as one and approach the problems one step at a time. I was raised in the housing project. And to be honest with you, just like the man said, when bullets are fired, when shots are fired, sometimes you jump and you look, but you don't go anywhere because you know it's not coming this way. You get used to it. We become desensitized to these things because for us it's normal and acceptable behavior. And what has to happen is neighborhoods have to be fed up, and law enforcement has to be fed up. And we have to come to the table in the spirit of understanding that in order for us to be effective, we have to work together.
Dr. Jason Piccolo, your thoughts about this particular issue. You've got, homicides in Louisville shooting up in 2020 amidst all of the unrest and everything else that was going on. And you heard what the officer had to say there.
I absolutely agree with what Ted said. There has to be an integration between the community and the police. They have to have an understanding that the police have to do their job and the community has to support them if they do their job correctly. And when it goes back to the police, there needs to be some sort of cultural geography, some sort of cultural classes in their training that says, hey, you know what? If you're going to be policing these communities, you need to know who you're policing. You need to know how to respond to different cultures. So there's so much that needs to be done to reform police, but there's also so much that needs to be done to integrate the community and the police together.
All right, folks, when we come back, our guests are all staying with us. We're going to take a look at some of the more of the issues that are all part of this documentary coming up Sunday on Newsy, The Model City. We'll be right back.
Download Earnin.
There's two sides. There's a night, there's a day.
I thought LMPD was a department that was going in the right direction.
There are people in this community that don't trust us.
You know, we can make some significant changes here.
The trust has never really been there because of the history.
Everyone worried about protesting. People are ready to die and go to jail.
What else do we have to take?
Newsy Docs presents The Model City, Sunday night at 9/8 Central, only on Newsy.
Under verdict form number 1, we, the jury, find the defendant, Brett Hankison, not guilty of wanton endangerment in the first degree under instruction number 4, as that applies to Cody Etherton. Verdict form number 2, as to Chelsea Nepper, we, the jury, find the defendant, Brett Hankison, not guilty of wanton endangerment first degree under instruction number 5. As to verdict form number 3, wanton endangerment first degree as to Zayden F., we, the jury, find the defendant, Brett Hankison, not guilty of wanton endangerment first degree under instruction number 6.
Welcome back to a special crime time segment. You remember that verdict right here on Court TV. Brett Hankison, the only officer charged criminally in the botched raid at Breonna Taylor's home. He was found not guilty, but he was still fired by the department. And this documentary that we're talking about tonight on Newsy is focusing on Louisville, Kentucky. That is the department they're talking about. Still with us, visual journalist for National Investigations with the EW Scripps Washington Bureau, Carrie Cochran. An investigative producer for Newsy, Karen Rodriguez, is with us. Former Special Agent Supervisor with the Department of Homeland Security, Dr. Jason Piccolo, and retired DEA Special Agent Ted Golden. Carrie, let me ask you about Brett Hankison. This is someone who was fired by the department. There was in part of the reform in Louisville, they were supposed to have some sort of an early warning system for officers who had done some things that maybe needed some retraining or special attention. Hankison, did he fall into that category, or would he have fallen into that category?
That's right. We found actually Louisville for years said that they had implemented an early warning system. But because of disputes between the FOP and police leadership, we found that they actually never did. And so an early warning system, according to experts who we talked to, is one of the strongest tools that a department can use to catch problematic behavior before something really terrible happens. So what we found was in a nearby, if Hankison would have been in a nearby department, the city of Lexington, Kentucky's police department, he would have been flagged at least 4 times within a 9-year period for just his use of force incidents alone. We found that he had 31 use of force incidents. And so, yeah, this flags an officer if, sometimes, policing is difficult, is a difficult work. And that can bleed through if you're going through something at home, or if you have encountered something difficult in your job, that can bleed through in your work and can lead to sometimes deadly consequences. And so we found that actually after Breonna Taylor's family, the city settled with them. That's when the city said again that they would implement an early warning system, and they still have yet to implement it.
Still have yet to do it. Ted Golden, your thoughts about a concept like that, an early warning system when there may be some troubled behavior?
In times like these, I think it's necessary because it's important to start tracking the information on these officers who repeatedly get involved in activities. Just as a Memphis police officer, we had officers who, when they got on the radio, we knew what was going on. We knew that they were doing something that got them in trouble, and of course we rushed to their aid. But that was their reputation, and everybody on the shift knew it. So we have to start identifying these folks and getting them some kind of treatment or some kind of additional training. Civil and human rights training needs to be taught in all these departments so that the officers can understand what's expected of them when they interact with the public.
Dr. Jason Piccolo, your thoughts about identifying officers who may have a little bit of a track record or a history here?
Well, I agree with technology. I'd like to track what is going on within a department, within a personnel, but also there needs to be management and leadership within the ranks. The sergeants, the peers, the lieutenants, they all have to be in charge of who they are, who's under their command. So we need to hold them accountable as well as the line officers. So there has to be integration of technology, but also management and leadership.
All right, we're out of time tonight, but the good news is that this documentary is coming up on Sunday. A big thank you to Carrie Cochran, Karen Rodriguez, Dr. Jason Piccolo, and Ted Golden. There it is, folks. The Model City is from Newsy Docs, Sunday night, 9 o'clock on Newsy. Make sure you watch it. You don't want to miss it. When we come back, folks, there's a child missing tonight, needs your help, So when we return, we're going to talk all about 13-year-old girl who needs to be brought home. Don't go away.